this is such a challenging issue to speak about. I have to conjure a way of addressing these issues in such a way whereby I can remain in character. Those of you who know me, those of you who watch my content, know that I am all about self-development. I'm all about human empowerment. I'm all about individual empowerment and absolute authentic self-expression. And so, of course, my take, what I have to say about all of this, well, it may be quite unconventional from the way in which you may hear other people addressing these issues. Because I'm the kind of person, I don't focus so much on the problem. I look at the problem, I observe the problem. However, I do not dwell on the problem, nor do I perceive the problem as a threat to my objective in life. As soon as I recognize a problem or something needing to be improved about my life, about society, about anything in particular, I immediately utilize my imagination and begin to conjure the solution, or solutions plural, to that particular problem or problems plural. In addition to that, growing up in this life, I've always been rather cocky. Not cocky in a negative way, not cocky in an arrogant way, but I've been what I like to call positively, spiritually cocky, or shall I say absolutely empowered, in the sense that I never allowed myself to subscribe to negative, limiting ideas and beliefs about myself and about the group, Black Americans, of which I belong, so to speak. I believe that we have absolute, unlimited, unfathomable, inestimable power within ourselves individually and collectively, talking about the Black American and all of us as a group. We have absolute power within ourselves. And we can do anything. We can accomplish anything. We can rise above anything. We can triumph over anything. And there is no real oppressor. Sure, there is a group of people, not necessarily the entire group. However, there are some what you might call bad or negative seeds, if you will. These individuals, well, they are racist. And well, they are our bullies, so to speak, if you will. However, we don't have to subjugate ourselves to the oppression. Not psychologically. The moment they have us psychologically, well, that's a wrap. That's a wrap. What I notice amongst us Black Americans is that we have a tendency to react rather than act. I am always saying that it is most conducive to act, to consciously, skillfully act rather than react. For us to react, well, we're not in control, we're not in charge if we're reacting. They presented us with something, a problem to respond to. They presented us with things in the media, things on television, things on the news. They present us with all kinds of things all of the time. And it's easy for us to get carried and swept away by it all. And it's easy for us to destabilize ourselves from our point of power and integrity, get into fear-based states of anger, of frustration. And that's perfectly all right to do that. However, it's not very healthy to remain in those states of consciousness. I teach that it's good to be fierce. It's good to be furious. The energy of fury and fierce is very different from the energy of anger and frustration and madness. Anger, frustration, madness, it's a fire that loses control and ends up burning everything in sight, and even everything that's not in sight. However, fury, fierceness, that's a controlled, sustained, self-aware, autonomous fire. We would be wise to develop the internal faculties, or shall I say refine our internal faculties, or cultivate our internal faculties, our intelligence, in such a way that we would allow ourselves to burn in this way and illuminate a clear path for ourselves as individuals and for ourselves collectively as a people in this nation. It's absolutely important that we have a plan. We can't just be reacting to all these scenarios, all these situations that are thrown at us. We can't keep interpreting our challenges as problems that, are beyond us. I always say that the best way to handle any given problem, any given situation in our lives that presents a challenge, is to make that problem small. Make that challenge small by making ourselves larger in response to those problems. If we see the problem as overwhelming, as too big or too great or too grand for us to handle or respond to in a way that's going to transmute the problem, well, it's easy to lose control. And that's the last thing we need right now, is to lose control. It's the last thing. We don't need it. We have to be in control of ourselves, in control of our narrative as individuals. And we have to be in control of our narrative as a people, collectively. For quite some time now, other groups, the oppressor, if you will, although personally I don't subscribe to the idea of an oppressor. However, I'm using that terminology to illustrate various points for us. And I forgot what I was saying. For quite some time now, the oppressor, if you will, has been in control of our narrative, individually and collectively. As Black Americans, we have allowed, so to speak, somebody else to dictate our narrative. I say now is the time for us to take charge of our own narrative as people, as Black Americans, individually and collectively. It's time. We have to own it, our own narrative, and become a living example, a living representation of that particular narrative. And may it be an empowering narrative, a narrative of nobility, of pride, of integrity, of dignity. We must begin to embody this on an individual level and demonstrate that to all those around us who are like us. Feels good to be empowered. Feels good. And from that place of empowerment, we will be capable, we are capable of addressing whatever the world, whatever the oppressor, if you will, wants to throw at us. We just need a plan. We have to get out of the habit of reacting and begin to act consciously and skillfully. The things that are happening in our world, well, they happen first on a dimensionally larger level. The playing board called Earth that we reside upon, it's a third dimensional playing board. And this third dimensional playing board is subject to fourth and fifth dimensional laws, if you will. So the solutions, they exist on a higher level. And so in order to grab hold of those solutions and ground them here on this level, we have to take ourselves to a whole new place within ourselves. I've made use of this all my life. Personally, in my own personal life, as I go about my daily life. And it's been like this for years, for as long as I can remember. I do not encounter instances of racism. Not directed at me. I don't encounter those situations in my life. Here in America, I do very well as an individual. However, I am aware of injustice and oppression taking place amongst the people around me, amongst some of my peers, friends, family members. And so I have a responsibility to address it. But I must do so from a place of empowerment. I am not going to give the quote-unquote oppressor the satisfaction of acknowledging him or her as my oppressor. As I said, I am positively spiritually cocky. I cannot be oppressed. And we have to get to a point within ourselves as a collective, Black Americans. We have to get to a point within ourselves where we cannot be oppressed. We are that empowered, in charge of our narrative, and we express that, we demonstrate that narrative to the entire world at large and to the whole nation. And by our very presence, we command respect. You don't have to like us, but you will respect us. We have to get to that point. But it starts with all of us as individuals. We are grand and phenomenal. This same power that the quote-unquote so-called oppressor has made use of in rather negative, unfavorable ways for the whole world, we can take that same power or conjure that same power from within ourselves and make use of it in a positive way for ourselves, for the nation, and for the whole world at large. That much we can do. However, we're going to have to be clever, much more clever than what we have been. I am not against the reacting, the destruction, looting. I'm not against the riots, not at all. Hey, sometimes perhaps it's best to shake things up, get things fired up a bit. Out of chaos comes order. And there's really no such thing as destruction in the purest sense of the word. There's only creation. You can't destroy creation. However, you can create destruction. And so destruction in and of itself is a creative phenomena. It's a creative act. So, if we have to tear shit down, hey. But really, we need a plan. We need a plan. We have to be more skillful about how we go about matters. Yeah? That's all I'm saying here. That's all. You know, and I hope it's coming across the way I intend for it to come across. You know. Alright. Why are we still racist in 2020? It's like watching one of those old black and white movies. And there's no sound, there's just subtitles. And the subtitles, well, they have the N-word in all caps in just about every scene. In 2020, man, it's like you got a nice fresh pack of Starbursts and you just throw out the pink ones because you just don't like them. It's not that they don't taste good, you just, for some mental reason or another, you just don't like the pink Starburst. Nevertheless, those are like one of the best ones. In 2020, the idea of racism based upon skin and skin tone is still being entertained. Isn't it something? And really and truly, there is only one race, the human race, a race of intelligent beings, and with our mental faculties, we have decided for one reason or another that we're going to compartmentalize one race, if you will, based upon different ethnicities and skin tones and this and that. And you know, you have certain individuals who are really good at manipulating large groups, masses of people. And, well, they have decided that we're going to create this idea of division and separation, and we're going to embed it into the social structure of this race of beings. We need them to be at odds with one another, with each other, and while they're busy fighting and discriminating against each other, well, they'll be blind to what we're doing behind the scenes. What's really going on in the midst of all this? Do you think that it's all natural and organic? Or do you think that it was perhaps socially engineered or contrived, even just a little bit, maybe a mixture of both? What do you think? Irregardless, it's very important that we all learn how to act rather than react. Ain't nobody, no group, no collective, nothing's gonna stop me. You can try to get my way, but I am coming from a place of consciousness, divinity. Can't nobody stop you when you're coming from a place of absolute empowerment. We manifest our own bullies. And speaking of that, there is an instance I can think of where I have run into direct racism aimed towards me. One of the things that I do, among many things, is that, well, I'm a mentor and a play therapist for children. And, well, in the San Francisco Bay Area, I took one of my little students to the park, and we were conducting his sessions there and his PE because I was substituting for him on his homeschooling curriculum. And when we were at the park, well, there was this woman. She kept looking. I saw her. Eventually, she walked toward us. And I kind of felt it. I knew what it was going to be about. Because I'm intuitive, I'm clairvoyant, I know people's intentions. So I I absolutely felt what she was about to come at us with. Because, of course, look at me. And the little kid, well, he's a little, what you would call a white kid. So she walks up and she asks, "Did you two come here together?" I didn't answer her. And I told the boy, I said, don't worry about her. And we kept doing what we were doing. Oh, she was real persistent. She asked, did you two come here together? You know, she couldn't believe that myself and this little white kid just so happened to, you know, come to the park together. And it's just okay. Of course, there had to be a problem. Eventually, the boy, he yelled at her. He said, yes, we came here together. And the woman said, I don't believe that. There are traffickers. We ignored her. But she was real persistent. So we left. I said, come on, kid. We left and we went back to his home. And his mother greeted us at the door. She said, how did it go? I said, oh, it went great. Started talking about what the kid learned and what we went over. And then I mentioned that we had some concerned citizens at the park. And she said, what? What happened? And I told her what happened. Whew! She put that white privilege to work. She stormed out of the house. She went to that park. The woman was still there with her husband and all the other people at the park. And she told that woman off. Guess what? This woman was not white. This woman was Filipino. I personally don't experience this racism from white people, from anybody for that matter, apart from the woman, of course. You know, or at least nobody has been bold enough to confront me to my face about any racism directed towards me. However, I observe that it's there, like I've said. And getting back to where I was going here, talking about bullies and the oppressor. One of the things that this little boy dealt with, this kid, is bullies. At his school, at the playground. Bullies, bullies, bullies. Essentially, that's what we're dealing with here as a collective. As Black Americans here in America, we're dealing with bullies. Not all white people, however, you have those. The collective of racist white people, well, bullies. So this kid, we got on the subject of his bullies, and I acknowledged his bullies, and I acknowledged the pain, the discomfort that he experiences having to put up with these bullies. However, of course, I couldn't leave him feeling like a helpless victim. I couldn't leave him reacting to these bullies in ways that get him into further trouble with these bullies. You know, I explained to him that the other person in your world, in his world, in our world, the other is essentially ourselves projected. Every person in our world is showing us in some way or another an aspect of our own psyche, something playing out within us subconsciously. And we do this individually. As individuals, the people who show up in our lives bear witness to something that's going on within our psyche, deep within our psyche on a subconscious level, and we may or may not be aware of it. However, this is also true collectively. Collectively speaking, Black people in America, we've created some bullies, some challenges that we must transcend. However, it does start with us. But anyway, I told this boy, your bullies are yourself, or an aspect of you projected, externalized in your world, in your reality. For example, How do you feel about yourself? We went over that. The kid is very, well, he doesn't think highly of himself at the time at all. Self-critical, self-loathing. He, mentally and psychologically speaking, was his own worst enemy at that time. And so the people that he materialized, that he manifested in his life, bear witness to all that stuff going on in his head. You know? And regarding us, black people, if we were to take every single black American on the whole continent and just put us all together, fuse us all together into one body, one individual, just one, and observe the psychology of this individual, what would this individual psychology be? What would be going on in this ultimate being? What would be going on in this being's mind, consciously and subconsciously, that would be causing this being to experience what this being is experiencing? What is our conception, our conceptions plural of ourselves, not just as individuals, but as a collective of black Americans? How do we see ourselves? We have to really change the way in which we see ourselves. I carry myself a certain way. Of course, I'm not phony, not even a little bit. Absolutely authentic I am. But as an individual, I stay true to myself and I carry myself in a certain way. And by a certain way, I mean in an empowered way. I've made up my mind that nobody's going to oppress me. You will not. Nobody shows up in my world to oppress me. And if they did, they ain't gonna stop me. Collectively as black people, if we took on that much confidence, if we really tapped into our power, really gained control of our narrative, really stopped buying into the idea that we're being oppressed. Now, of course, oppression is happening. However, we can't allow ourselves to live in the belief, in the energy, in the mindset of being oppressed, of being victimized. Otherwise, that's the vibe, that's the energy that we create within ourselves. And in such a predicament, we never create a space or energy or frequency within ourselves that would allow us to transcend that state of oppression, that state of being the victim, and become the victor, become the empowered being, to act rather than react.